Daryl was arrested the other day by a detective from this precinct.
What charge?
Being unique.
In 1975, TV producer Danny Arnold created Barney Miller, a sitcom set at a police station in Greenwich Village. He wanted to make sure the show reflected the setting, which at the time was the heart of gay culture in New York. As a result, the show had a lot of firsts for queer representation on TV. One of TV's first recurring gay characters, one of the first gay couples, one of the first gay immigrants, even one of the first gay sleepovers.
Do you understand the expression man to man?
Very well.
But it wasn't easy for him to do, because all this was happening at a time when television was under pressure from Congress to clean up its act, and networks had decided to scrub their gay content. Danny Arnold gambled his career on putting gay representation on TV at a time when Congress didn't want it, networks didn't want it, and an increasingly vocal religious right didn't want it. So, was that gamble worth it? Hey, I'm Matt Baum, I make videos about pop culture, and this time I want to show you how Barney Miller wove gay storylines into the comedy. This is a story of how a gay activist and a producer who got his start on Bewitched teamed up to defeat one of the most powerful censors in Hollywood. So if you're not familiar, Barney Miller was a sitcom that ran from 1975 to 1982. Producer Danny Arnold had previously helped create the show Bewitched, which was about a closeted witch living in suburbia. I've got a whole separate video about that show. After working on Bewitched, Danny wanted to make a new sitcom that was a little more grounded. It was set at a police station. Here's how he described it.
The show was not a gimmick show. I mean, it wasn't about somebody dying and coming back as a ball of butter or a radio or anything like that.
Honestly, I would have watched that, but fair enough. Danny started working on a concept about a bunch of gritty but grounded cops working together in a New York police station. He sold the concept to ABC. But just barely. The network had so little confidence in the idea that they only ordered 2 episodes, so Danny knew he had to make them really good. As luck would have it, he hit the jackpot with the casting, finding a bunch of actors who all fit together perfectly and were funny in very different ways. There's the captain, Barney.
Gotta have a sense of humor in a job like this. Yes, sir, I definitely can keep it to myself.
There's Detective Wojo, who's kind of the staff himbo.
On the criminal offense, you type burglary 6 times. Just trying to make a point.
Nick Yamana, a deadpan coffee lover.
If you're gonna cool off, you drink something hot. It's physics.
Where'd you learn that?
It was on the back of a jar of coffee.
The older seasoned cop, Detective Fish.
How long you been a cop?
I was the first.
And Detective Harris, the classy one.
You're simply going to have to realize that the people who patronize today's erotic films are a lot more sophisticated than you and your friends were.
By the way, if he looks familiar, it's Shepherd Book from Firefly.
Don't the Bible have some pretty specific things to say about killing?
Quite specific. It is, however, somewhat fuzzier on the subject of kneecaps.
Not only were these all fantastic actors, they all clearly enjoyed working together and making each other laugh.
Hey, Harris. It's really great working with you.
It's nice working with you, too.
With a perfect cast in place, Danny decided to give the show an additional edge by basing episodes on real-life stories that he found in the newspaper. And he set it in Greenwich Village, which just happened to be the center of New York's gay life, just a few years after Stonewall. That meant gay characters would have been a natural part of the setting, much to ABC's dismay. We'll get to that in just a bit. Sure enough, the very first episode after the pilot in January of 1975 introduces a gay character named Marty. He's a thief who is caught snatching purses.
I've thrown away better purses than that.
Maniac!
You just love all this attention, don't you?
Marty's clearly a regular here. He's got a friendly relationship with everyone in the station, including Captain Miller. In fact, he mentions he once tried out to be a cop.
They turned you down.
Of course they turn me down. It's ridiculous. What's wrong with a gay cop? There are gay robbers.
I want to point out 2 things here. First, I love Marty's outfit. Look at that cute belt. And second, did you hear how the audience laughed at the question, what's wrong with a gay cop? This was 1975, and police departments around the country were known for arresting queer people and being vocally opposed to ever hiring queer people. The idea of a gay police officer seemed so ridiculous, it was just assumed to be the punchline of a joke. But this is actually an example of how the show lifted storylines from real life. At the same time that this episode was being filmed, 2 legislators from New York had just introduced the first nationwide bill to ban employment discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. So you can already see showrunner Danny Arnold using the show to introduce what was, to many viewers at the time, a brand new concept. But Marty's main function in this episode is to hang around the station and make funny quips.
You're just lucky the police got you before my husband did.
The same to you.
Honestly, I like this character a lot. Marty's funny, he's confident, he's smart, and he's openly gay. There's no ambiguity or winking about it.
What did you do?
I held up a candy store.
I have candy at my place.
But you know who didn't love this character? ABC. When executives saw this footage, they panicked. Openly queer characters were still relatively new to prime time, and the networks had just been put through the ringer over some particularly bad portrayals of gay characters on the show Marcus Welby, where a doctor cures a man's homosexuality, and also on Policewoman, which featured a gang of killer lesbians.
All right, sweetheart. Arrest me, and then let's just see what happens.
Gay viewers were furious about these episodes, and they staged high-profile protests, even storming executives' offices and disrupting broadcasts. ABC was not eager to repeat that, and for a while it looked like they might not let the show make it to air. But Danny Arnold was ready. He had a secret weapon, a man named Newt Dieter. Newt was a clinical psychologist who worked with an organization called the Gay Media Task Force. They'd formed just a few years earlier in LA, and they sought to improve the depiction of queer characters on TV, kind of a precursor to GLAAD. Danny knew that a handful of shows had started running scripts past the task force before shooting to make sure that there wasn't anything in there that would cause another protest. So he called Newt to take a look at the Marty character. Newt's opinion? While Marty did conform to some stereotypes, compared to what was happening on Marcus Welby and on Policewoman, it was far less offensive. Newt didn't think it was a problem, he gave it a thumbs up. So, with a blessing from the Gay Media Task Force, the episode was allowed to air. And then, a few weeks later, they felt confident enough to bring Marty back for a second appearance in an episode entitled The Guest. The main story of this one is that a mafia informant is afraid that somebody's trying to kill him. But hey, do you recognize this informant? Anything familiar about his face? It's Stan from the Golden Girls. Guess he just has bad luck with Italians. Meanwhile, Marty's arrested for stealing luggage, and once again, he gets all the good lines.
When are you gonna learn you can't take things that belong to other people?
Why would I take something that belonged to me?
Just like before, Marty's role is mostly to stand around making quips, and he does a great job. The jokes are great, and this actor, Jack DeLeon, can get a lot of laughs out of just a look.
I won't book you, but I'm gonna have to hold you.
By the time season 1 ended in spring of '75, Marty had achieved something that almost never happened on TV. By appearing in multiple episodes, he'd become one of television's first recurring gay characters. There'd been a few others before him on the shows The Corner Bar and Hot L Baltimore, but those were both, sorry to say, huge flops that almost nobody watched. Marty was the first one on a show that actually gained a following. So, did queer audiences celebrate this trailblazing new character? No, they did not. Turns out, Newt Dieter misjudged. Even though Marty was better than characters who'd appeared on other shows, gay audiences were still offended by the stereotype of a gay character who's effeminate and a criminal. The Gay Media Task Force got an earful from gay viewers. But to his credit, Newt listened to the complaints, and so did Danny Arnold. Over the summer of 1975, the two of them went back to the drawing board to come up with a solution. And by the way, a lot of this research comes from the book Alternate Channels, which I highly recommend. There's a link in the description. The character, Marty, presented Newt and Danny with a challenge. On one hand, Newt felt that Marty wasn't unrealistic. There are many effeminate, flamboyant gay men, so he didn't want to lose the character altogether. But on the other hand, because Marty was the only gay character on the show, it reinforced a popular misconception that all gay men are effeminate, and also that they're amoral criminals and out to seduce straight men. That trope had a way of showing up over and over on TV, and if that was the only depiction that viewers ever saw, it would just deepen the stereotype in the public's mind. So Newt and Danny came up with an idea. What if they kept Marty, but with a couple of strategic changes? And as they got to work on the show's second season, the writers started cooking up a bunch of big, bold tweaks to the character. By the summer of 1975, they were ready to go into production on a script for the fall season. But then, a new problem came up. This guy, Arthur Schneider. He was ABC's chief censor. His job was to catch what he considered objectionable content and stop it from going to air. And in 1975, censors at ABC, CBS, and NBC all got huge new powers to veto scripts. It was part of a national agreement between the networks to tamp down on controversial programming, something they called the Family Viewing Hour. You can check out my video about the show Alice for that whole story. Danny had already fought with Schneider over season 1 of Barney Miller. One episode had a line about a character who was a sex worker, and Schneider tried to make Danny remove it, but Danny refused to budge. Here's the actor Hal Linden talking about what happened.
Danny says, shoot it. Hangs up, turns to the network and says, I'm shooting it the way I wrote it. It's up to you if you put it on the air. But if you don't, I'm not going to make any more.
That was a huge gamble. Remember, ABC was so doubtful about this show that they only ordered 2 episodes at first. But Danny was confident that they were onto something great, and that audiences would fall in love with the show if Schneider would just get out of the way.
But I knew that the success of the show would depend upon allowing the audience to get to know these characters.
Everyone else on the show gambled big on its success too. While Danny mortgaged his house to pay for the production, the whole cast and crew worked tirelessly to prove that Barney Miller would work, often staying on set late into the night to make sure every take came out just right.
It's 3:15 a.m. We're all hanging tough. The last slate of the season for Barney Miller.
ABC could easily have said, fine, you don't want to shoot it our way? We won't air it. And you're fired. But Danny's gamble paid off. ABC, which had already canceled a ton of shows that season and needed content for the schedule, backed down. Schneider was overruled, and the line about the sex worker stayed in. Barney Miller survived its first season, but just barely, ending in 68th place. So going into season 2, everybody knew they were in a very precarious position. Despite all their hard work, despite all the late nights, despite the very special cast they'd managed to assemble, all that work could now just get taken away. As production on season 2 started in the summer of 1975, Schneider had Barney Miller in his crosshairs and started ordering a ton of changes to the show. When shooting started, Schneider came down to monitor the set with his staff. According to Danny, who wrote about the visit later, when Schneider showed up, Danny told him, "You and your staff are making it very tough on me." Schneider replied, "Danny, I'm not going to take any shit from you." And yes, I recognize the irony of me censoring a quote from a network censor. By the way, this exchange was happening in front of the entire cast and crew, all of whom had been working tirelessly to keep the show from getting yanked from the schedule. And now, here was one of the most powerful people at the network talking openly in front of them about how the show and their jobs could get wiped out, which must have been incredibly stressful. So Danny asked if they could go someplace more private, and Schneider said no. Quote, "There's nothing that I have to say to you that I can't say in front of my staff or in front of anybody else." To which Danny replied, "Okay, then you can go f*** yourself. This is my staff and my show. If you want to talk to me like a gentleman, I'll talk to you. If not, go screw off."
Don't fuck with me, fellas!
This was another huge gamble. All Danny had was a brand new show with no established stars that was pretty low in the ratings. Schneider, on the other hand, had a huge amount of power, and his crackdown intensified in the weeks that followed. He ordered Danny to remove the words damn and hell from scripts, he forced them to write the sex worker character off the show, and he made it clear that there was no way he'd allow the gay storylines that Danny and Newt Dieter had worked on to air. Most of those changes Danny had to go along with. There was just too much at stake, and Schneider was too powerful to challenge. Danny knew he didn't have the clout to win most of those fights. But there was one issue that he was willing to stand up for, and that was fixing the depiction of the Marty character. He knew that they could do better, and he was determined to make it happen, despite Schneider's interference. ABC had already rejected the gay script that he wanted to shoot, but without the network's knowledge, Danny ordered the cast and crew to go ahead and tape the episode anyway. He paid for it out of pocket, about $100,000 of his own money, which, adjusted for inflation, would have been around $500,000. And then with the episode in the can, he sent it to ABC, sat back, and waited to see what would happen. If ABC rejected it, not only would he be out all that money, but there was a real possibility that he could lose his job and the show would be canceled. But what Danny didn't know is what was going on behind the scenes at all 3 networks. In late September of 1975, Schneider met with the censors from NBC and CBS to talk about how the family viewing hour was working out for all of them. And at that meeting, they privately admitted to each other that it was going terribly. None of the network censors had any idea what constituted offensive material. They confessed to each other that they were all just guessing about what to take out and what to leave in. Schneider accused his counterparts at NBC and CBS of not censoring enough, but they told him that he was censoring too much. They wanted to allow more controversial content back on the air, which would have put ABC at a competitive disadvantage. By the end of the meeting, he had started to change his mind, and he told them, quote, "Maybe I've been too tough." Schneider left the meeting, took a look at the gay episode that Danny Arnold had shot with his own money, and 2 days later, word came back. The episode could air as is. Because Danny had stuck to his principles, the gay episode survived, even while queer content was getting purged everywhere else on the schedule. Barney Miller was the only ABC show to air anything queer in the Family Hour block for the entire year. So here's what viewers saw. The episode's entitled Discovery, and it aired in October of 1975. Marty's back, but this time, he's not alone.
This is enemy territory.
Don't be ridiculous, these are my friends.
2 big changes right off the bat. First, they added a new character, Daryl, Marty's partner. And second, unlike in season 1, they haven't been arrested. They're not criminals. They're here to report a crime. Daryl explains to Barney that a few days earlier, a cop accosted him as he was coming out of a gay bar.
What charge?
Being unique.
The cop, Daryl says, demanded a $50 bribe or he'd beat him up and arrest him for being gay. This was a scam referred to in some circles as a fruit hustle. Barney is aghast, and he immediately wants to find out who's responsible.
What did he look like?
He was ugly.
Tall ugly or short ugly?
When you're ugly, what's the difference?
Barney has a hunch that it wasn't a cop at all, just a scammer dressed as one, even though it was fairly common for police to shake queer people down for money. But to make sure, he has Marty and Daryl look through photos of all the cops of the 12th Precinct. And as we spend some more time with these two, I gotta say, they honestly make a very nice couple. And not just because of the wonderful tone-on-tone outfits. By the way, if you know where I can find this gorgeous sweater Daryl's wearing, please let me know. Another way that they're well matched is that they both get all the best jokes. Here's my favorite.
He was a few inches shorter than I am.
About 5'11"?
No, about 6'3". I was wearing my platforms.
No, wait, actually, I think this one's my favorite.
Oh, I hope it doesn't take too long. I have a lecture at noon.
Oh, you go to school?
No, I'm having lunch with my mother.
That's solid. I get what Marty sees in him. But in addition to the good gags, the writers also use this opportunity to give us a deeper understanding of Marty and Daryl than we got in season 1. In this episode's B-plot, there's a man being held in a cell after threatening to jump off the Washington Arch. Marty goes over to console him.
Oh, I wasn't going to jump. I was just looking around.
I know, I've seen that view myself.
It's a really nice, sympathetic moment, a real display of kindness from Marty, and some insight into what must have been an unhappy past. The man asks Marty how he overcame his feelings of hopelessness, and Marty's answer is kind of poetic.
Well, I was standing on the railing of the Brooklyn Bridge, and this car came by and they had the radio on, and Doris Day was singing Que Sera, Sera. And I thought, you know, she's right.
Okay, little explanation here for you kids. The song that he's talking about, Que Sera, Sera, is also known as What Will Be, and it's about wondering what the future holds for you and coming to terms with not knowing. The singer and actress Doris Day made the song famous in the 1956 film The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be.
And it's a song that I was well past college before I learned that it was not, in fact, originally written for the Chipmunks. So that's why Que Sera, Sera, a song sung by a gay icon about learning to embrace the future, might have brought Marty some peace of mind. It's pretty sweet. Anyway, while they're looking through the photos, a cop in plainclothes brings in a suspect. He says that he caught the guy trying to pull a fruit hustle scam, and Daryl instantly recognizes him.
I told you he was ugly.
You were being kind.
The cop who arrested the suspect is Sergeant Forbes, and he says that the suspect grabbed him as he was coming out of a gay bar.
I just walked out and he grabbed me.
Wojo can't believe what he's hearing.
You thought you were gay? A detective sergeant in the New York police force? Que sera, sera.
Once you see this episode, it's clear why Danny Arnold felt it was worth sticking his neck out and fighting for. It's a great story with a fantastic funny twist ending, and it really improves on the gay storylines of the first season. Not only did they make Marty no longer a criminal, but they gave him compassionate dialogue, a sympathetic backstory, and a relationship. Plus, he gets to be as fun and flamboyant as ever. And the presence of Daryl is a big improvement too. There had been virtually no gay couples, recurring or otherwise, on TV before this. And then there's the reveal of Sergeant Forbes, a handsome hunk who bucks TV's usual gay trope stereotype and shows the audience that a gay cop isn't so ridiculous after all. This 1975 episode was met a lot more warmly than Marty's initial appearance, and the success of this episode led to storylines that deepened Marty and Daryl's relationship, and also added even more groundbreaking gay characters. By 1976, the networks had given up on the family viewing hour altogether. Not only was it impossible to implement, a court ruled that it was actually unconstitutional, and shows suddenly found themselves with a lot less interference. And by the way, I'm going to be posting a video over on Patreon about how that ushered in groundbreaking new shows like Soap. Check that out at patreon.com/mattbaum. So, now that he was freed from the worst of the Censors' interference, Danny brought Marty and Daryl back the next season in a 1976 two-parter called Quarantine.
I don't like this place.
Well, he helped us the last time, didn't he?
Yes, but he didn't enjoy it.
Marty and Daryl are thinking about moving to California due to a recent Supreme Court ruling.
Supreme Court upholds anti-gay statutes.
9 old men who dress up in black robes and they say we're peculiar.
This is probably a reference to the Supreme Court ruling that year, Doe v. Commonwealth, that said that states were free to criminalize homosexuality.
I hate the Supreme Court!
In New York, homosexuality remained illegal until 1980, but California had decriminalized it the year this episode aired. But Marty and Daryl can't move there just yet. Marty's still on parole from 2 years ago, and he wants Barney to write a character reference to his parole officer.
Marty, I've had you arrested 6 times.
I need someone who's known me for 2 years.
While they're in the office, a suspect outside collapses, and when a doctor comes to look at him, he says the man might have smallpox. Everyone in the station is ordered to quarantine, a storyline that feels oddly current today, especially with how some of the characters are tempted to ignore the orders.
Can't we just wash and sneak out the back way here?
Just relax.
And others don't believe the quarantine is real,
What is this, some kind of joke?
and how everyone is extremely stressed about how long they'll have to quarantine, whether or not they've been exposed, and who is and who isn't vaccinated.
If you've been inoculated, you're probably safe.
Oh, have we been inoculated?
Well, mine's run out. I haven't been to Europe for 7 years.
You've been to Europe?
But until the man who collapsed can get tested, they're all confined to the station, so they do their best to get along. At first, things are tense. Wojo doesn't want to let them sleep in cots next to each other.
It ain't gonna bother you, it ain't gonna bother me.
It's gonna bother me.
It's gonna bother me.
But as the hours wear on, the show once again finds opportunities to give more depth to Marty and Daryl. They start talking to a cop who's particularly homophobic, and he doesn't approve of them. But they point out that they're not all that different.
Love and affection between two human beings is nothing to be ashamed of, Inspector.
Of course not. But you two, you're carrying it too far, don't you understand?
It isn't that much further.
And we also learn about their past. When the inspector says that people might think he's gay because he was never married,
Oh, so somebody was shooting up their mouth about the fact that I never got married, is that it?
I was married once.
Well, if you're gonna take that attitude, it's...
remember that detail about Daryl being married once. It'll come up again later. So, as the hours wear on, the regulars find themselves unexpectedly connecting with Marty and Daryl, especially after they make coffee for everyone.
These cups look different.
I scrubbed off all the mold and mildew.
I thought it was a pattern.
By the next morning, even Wojo's gained an appreciation for them.
Thanks for the coffee.
You're very welcome.
They're actually getting to be friends by the time test results come back from the hospital. Turns out, it was just chickenpox,
Straight out of my body and onto your plate?
which in the 70s most people had once and were then immune. They are free to leave, and Barney says that he'll be happy to write that character reference for Marty.
They probably won't even listen to me.
They would if you got emotional about it.
We're now 2 years on from Marty's first introduction, and you can really see Newt Dieter's guidance paying off. The show's using his recommendations about making gay characters more diverse and complex, and they're still as funny as those first appearances, but now they're also a lot deeper. The next year, the show broadened their depictions of gay characters even more. There was an episode about a Russian singer who wants to defect to the United States. Barney tells him that he can't be granted asylum if his reasons for wanting it are frivolous.
Well, let's say you were in love with an American girl. Frivolous.
No, I'm not frivolous.
Of course you're not.
I'm homosexual.
This might be a reference to the real-life story of Gennady Smakov, a gay Soviet writer who claimed asylum in the US in 1975. Conditions for queer people in the Soviet Union were very harsh at the time. Homosexuality was illegal, and you could be sentenced to years of hard labor or death for publishing anything on the subject. It's amazing to see this sitcom tackle a topic that hardly anyone in the US was talking about at the time. Then 2 years later, the show broke new ground again with a character named Zatelli. He'd been on the show for a couple of seasons, and then in a 1979 episode, he confides in Barney that he's gay.
Why me?
I gotta trust somebody.
He asks Barney to keep it a secret, and the episode ends with him still closeted to everybody else. But that's not the end of his storyline, so keep him in mind. That same season, Marty and Daryl come back for their most prominent storyline yet. They return to the precinct and immediately bump into their old friend Wojo.
You're looking good.
Thanks. You look good yourself.
Can I get in on this?
Wojo makes a good point. Look at how Daryl's presentation has evolved. It's early 1980 now, and he's no longer dressed like a flamboyant gay 70s hippie. Now he's got tidy hair, a nice overcoat, and a suit. His looks shifted to what would be considered successful by 80s standards, which is to say, he looks like he's got money. That was a fairly unusual way for gay characters to be depicted at this time, and he even gets in a little dig at the TV trope of the homosexual decorator.
My, you've certainly done some lovely things with this room since
Could we
the last
stop
time.
perpetuating the stereotype for a moment and get on with this?
They're here because they need some help. Remember how Daryl mentioned that he used to be married? Well, he and his ex-wife Eleanor have a son named Jason, a Court granted them joint custody, but lately Eleanor's been refusing to let Daryl see his son.
Jason is my only son.
Mr. Driscoll, I'm
Captain, my chances of having another are incredibly slim.
But Barney can't help them. Even though Daryl's entitled to custody and the wife's violating the terms, they gotta go to court to get it all ironed out.
Well, this is a fine how do you do.
But Daryl's tired of dealing with the custody system that, at that time, would have been pretty hostile to him. Gay parents had a very hard time getting custody at all, and an even harder time enforcing it. So Daryl takes matters into his own hands. He goes to his son's school and picks him up, or at least he tries to.
The gym teacher stopped.
She didn't have to be so rough.
The ex-wife, Eleanor, comes down to the station furious. Things are awkward.
I've heard a lot about you.
That is the best you could do?
I was hoping we could be friends.
Eleanor wants to press kidnapping charges, but she says she'll drop it if Daryl stays away from Jason.
I don't want him exposed to a degrading and unnatural lifestyle.
You haven't even been over.
And this is where the episode turns. Eleanor tries to appeal to the cops on a basis that she thinks is a place they'll all agree with her.
Look, you are a policeman. You deal with these people all the time. I mean, you know how they are. The things that they do, right?
I'm gay.
Oh yeah, Zatelli. Remember how it came out to Barney a few episodes ago and planned to keep it a secret? Everyone seems shocked to hear his outburst now, including him. But Eleanor's bigotry and her assumption that not only is there no such thing as a gay cop, but that all cops would be disgusted by gay people was too much for him to keep quiet about. Now that it's clear that the police might not be as sympathetic as she thought, Eleanor starts to cave, and she says that she never actually minded that he's gay. She's just jealous of how he's a more fun parent.
Taking him to the ballet and to Broadway shows and the best restaurants in town.
Now what's the matter with that?
You're making me look bad.
To be honest, I think the episode kind of loses steam here. It's kind of an abrupt turnaround from someone who was calling him degrading and unnatural a few seconds ago. I can't imagine that she meant degrading and unnatural to refer to Broadway shows, unless she caught the previews for Cats. Anyway, turns out that Daryl's problem is that he's too good at being a dad. Again, a pretty rare way for TV to depict a gay character in 1980, and quite a shift from a few years earlier. Remember, we started out with Marty being depicted as a sassy background purse snatcher. Now he and his partner are fine, upstanding co-parents. Daryl promises to rein in all the cool gay dad stuff, and that's good enough for Eleanor.
Goodbye, Mr. Morrison.
Let's do it again soon.
The Zatelli storyline continues after this episode. Another cop finds out that he's gay and starts making threats against him. I've got a video over on Patreon about that whole storyline. You can check that out at patreon.com/mattbaum. And one more side note here. It's probably for the best for everybody that Daryl and Eleanor's marriage broke up, because a few years later, Eleanor gets to marry an ambassador.
Allow me to present she who is my wife, Mrs. Sarek.
We get one more glimpse of Marty and Daryl 2 years later in one of the last scenes of the last episode. In the series finale, the station gets shut down, and a small core group of the show's most notable characters gather together to say goodbye. Marty and Daryl are among them.
We just wanted to stop by and say thanks to all of you for what you've done.
I think it's pretty meaningful that of all the characters who appeared on the show across 8 seasons, Marty and Daryl were among those that Danny Arnold included in this final going away scene. It really highlights just how much they've changed, from Marty's introduction as a fun but somewhat stereotypical side character, to becoming a couple, to gradually being woven into the fabric of the show alongside other queer storylines, each appearance breaking new ground. None of that would have been possible if the Censors had had their way. And if not for the work of some very dedicated people working behind the scenes who saw a chance to make something worth fighting for.
Oh, that took guts.
By the way, while I was researching this video, I found a lot of fun stories that I just didn't have room for in the script, including more about Zatelli, Barney Miller's connection to the show Soap, and also an admission from the network Censor many years later that ABC was able to feature more gay characters thanks in part to the Robin Williams show Mork and Mindy. I've got a bonus video with some of those stories over on Patreon at patreon.com/mattbaum, and I'll be posting even more in the coming weeks. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm ready to be degraded and unnatural.